It's time to get clear, get heard, and get paid. And join us on our Soul Business Retreat. Attract your dream clients and income over 3 nights as we shape your passion into a business that makes a profit. Follow our 13 steps to reach 5K in 30 days in the beautiful Byron Bay. Whether you're starting, growing, or expanding your business, our all-inclusive 3-night retreat is the place for you. Check out the details in the show notes, and we hope to see you soon.
Welcome to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We are so excited to have you joining us on this journey where we explore different ways to empower your soul, whether it's healing in your kitchen or all the way up in the corporate world. Come with us as we look into different ways to heal your mind, body, and soul.
Hey everyone, it's Catherine from Willow Healing, and I have today with me Katie Turner. She is a registered psychologist and speaker and the founder of Katie Turner Psychology Inc. She's also the author of F Toxic Spirituality, Avoiding Red Flags and Navigating the Spiritual Path with Integrity. Katie believes in a holistic approach to healing. Her mission is to bring together the science of psychology to the practice of spirituality. She offers consultations, sessions, workshops, and resources to organizations and modern day spiritual seekers. You can also take the free quiz to discover your dominant intuitive superpower and receive your free 6-week Deepen Your Intuition challenge at her website, which we will put in the show notes. But if you're listening and really curious, it's katieturnerpsychology.com. So a big welcome to the show, Katie.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me here.
So there's so much I want to unpack with that. So how did you did you find you went from psychology into spirituality, or it kind of happened simultaneously? How did your journey begin?
I was psychology first. I wasn't raised spiritual or religious, more science-based. Looking back, I realized I was highly sensitive and empathic, but I didn't realize that until quite a bit later. So I was always drawn. People would always talk to me and tell me a lot of stuff, personal stuff, really quickly and early. And I was always interested in psychology and just kind of followed what I was interested in without having a very strong long-term plan. But I was already in the field and I already had completed my master's, was ready to register, was working in the field. And I found there was a lot of limitations or things I was finding, like, is this all there is in just the traditional way I was taught and traditional kind of mental health system? And then it was my own burnout and kind of disillusionment with certain aspects of the system where I kind of stumbled into my own spiritual awakening. I didn't believe in it before. I thought it was maybe the placebo effect of, like, if people believe it's true, great, good for them, but I don't think I'll ever know one way or the other what happens or what's going on. But looking back now, I know I was actually doing a lot of practices, like a lot of meditation, a lot of space, exploring different modalities that actually do help open up that intuitive connection. I just didn't even believe in it really at the time, beyond like the neuroscience of this helps you be more present and helps with anxiety and other things, but wasn't intentionally looking for the spiritual. But then stuff started to happen there, and I started to have other experiences and kind of changed my sense of reality and worldview a bit there.
I think it's always that way, right? Like, it's like, oh no, like for me it was a genuine curiosity because I always felt there was something bigger, but I love for you it was just like, oh, actually I was secretly doing it, but I just wasn't gelling with that term until I actually went further in.
Yeah, and it's a little bit different for everybody. Like, some people are kind of born with it or certainly connected. It's part of their upbringing, part of their experience. For me, I don't. Looking back, I was like, I dominantly was empathic intuitive, but I didn't know that was happening. So it wasn't like I get messages and talk to angels. It was more just like I feel a lot of emotions all the time, and they weren't all mine.
Exactly. I understand. Mine was I felt everyone's pain and I didn't realize that I was feeling their pain. So I fully understand and resonate with what you went through, Katie, because when you start to unpack it, you're like, oh crap, I didn't have to experience all that, but I did, but I had to. But at the same time, I wish I knew what I knew now, but that's part of the journey, right?
For sure. Yeah. It was a long process. It's not, I kind of give a shortened version, but a lot of this is over years and decades, because then trying to get my footing in the spiritual world, get enough trust in that of like, hey, what's helpful, what's actually hitting on something that's true versus this is kind of cool experience, but does it mean anything? Does it actually help in the real world? Like that took quite a while. And then it took time to get evidence-based trainings to be able to do it as like to bring it in as a psychologist, because it is a registered profession. Like you have to have evidence-based modalities. So.
I find it's nice now, but because my background's allied health as well, coming from like the more you step into this, the more science is starting to catch up. You know, like it used to be so woo for you to say, I'll go ground. Whereas now there's so much evidence showing that grounding actually, you know, resets your body and helps with inflammation, etc., etc. And the same, you know, with listening to your heart, like all this evidence coming out from the Heart Math Institute and everything like that. It's just so nice going, oh, great, finally what we've all been feeling and trust is actually being shown to be, you know, backed up by science, which sounds really weird, but it seems to be a lot of people don't accept that validation of what we're doing until there's a little bit of that science element. And working in psychology, you definitely, that would have been a challenge.
Mm-hmm. It's a process, for sure. I mean, definitely I'm not the first person. I'm thankful for the people who've gone ahead, who've blazed those trails, who've done a lot of research, who've established different ways of practicing. So I was following in other footsteps, but it does exist. It's just, you kind of need to know what to look for. It's not that easy in the mental health system. If you're having spiritual symptoms, there are mental health professionals who kind of know how to work with that, who have specialized training, but it's not really accepted in the overall system very well or understood very well.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people, if you're like hearing or seeing things other people don't see, you might want to be careful who you tell. And on the flip side of that, sometimes spiritual communities can go too far of like, oh, this is just a spiritual awakening, where it's like, this might be an actual mental health episode. And there may be spiritual components going on, but this person is really getting destabilized, and you don't want to keep opening up more. Like they need to get grounded and functional in 3D life first.
Yeah, and I guess there's that balance, right? Like not using spirituality as an escape, but rather to enhance who you are, like on a soul level, rather than using it as a reason to explain away things that might not be good that you're going through, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think just people are so multifaceted and so multi-layered, and everyone has their own path, that we're in this age of information and there's a lot out there, which can be very helpful and very beneficial, but the shadow side of it too can be, people might take a little snippet of something and be like, oh, well, this was it for me, so this is everybody. And that's not, everybody's in their own spot. Like what's going to be helpful for each person is different.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And the amount of stories I've heard where people will go, oh, you know, I had this really profound experience and now I'm my prophetic channeler or whatever it might be. It's like, actually, no, that was an experience, and okay, but you know, you got to keep doing the work. You can't just think, oh, everything's done now. And I guess that's where being in touch with yourself and your ego, you know, and knowing, you know, what's the difference can be really powerful. So have you found that you're able to start to bring more practices into psychology, more spiritual practices, or is that still something you're trying to find ground in?
No, it's the majority of my practice. It's been for a decade. It's a lot of the work I do. It's a lot of I went into private practice really, I had a pretty significant spiritual experience that guided me to be like, this is the foundation. This is what my work needs to be based on, not hiding it. So
Perfect.
That led to doing my own business and practice so that I can market that way. And I tend to attract people who either are looking for that, they want to talk about that as part of their therapy, or they're like, I'm not really sure, but I'm kind of open to something else, but I want the credentials behind it too. So I'm not going to just go to somebody too woo-woo, but but I'll dip my toe into here with the science door. So that tends to be the majority of my practice. But I'm in a period of like another unknown of, again, intuitive calling of making it more available for more people. And that's really what the book was based on, because there was just so many things. There was a lot of experiences I had in trying to navigate my own awakening in the beginning when I was not doing it professionally. Like I did not bring that in until I had enough training and experience and credential to do that. But there's just a lot that I see, either just people speaking online or sessions in my office that I'm like, oh man, like there's why.
I understand. I understand. It's so funny because I was talking to Katie. Hopefully, by the time this episode comes out, my books come out too. But I felt the same calling. Like someone needs to talk about all these things and about, how to be, especially as professionals and as people working in that spirituality realm. There is so much misinformation and there's so much ego driven practices as well, and especially a lot of people who've had their gifts for a long time. I found they're the ones that I'm the most cautious of, and it's not everybody, I'm not putting everyone in that, but they're the ones that I'm kind of like, you're not still doing the work, because the work never really ends. We're always evolving our soul, we're always leveling up, we always have to be open to new information that comes through. And when you close yourself off to that because there's this ego, like, I know everything, well, actually, no, you don't. How will you ever know everything?
And it gets dangerous because you're not even aware you have a blind spot.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly. So as you were writing this book, what were some key points that you wanted to get across to people who are curious and want to go pick your book up? I do.
I really wanted to write it more as, here's kind of a general roadmap for people of, it's not to tell you what your path is, but it's some reflection questions and things to consider. And then if you need to go deeper, to do that with your own practitioners, with your own therapist. But I mean, there's a few different things I touch on in different chapters. I mean, talking about, even if the truth is that we're spiritual beings in this human body nervous system, we're still in a human body nervous system. So like a little bit about trauma response, subconscious, unconscious mind. Like there's things we have to protect us and keep us safe that sometimes we can go too far into like the spiritual piece, can be like, oh, but we're spiritual. It's like, yeah, but we're like we're trapped in this body, brain, nervous system. Like we also have to work with that. And people are at different points in their path. We have different experiences. We have different stored trauma that, some things that can be very helpful for someone on a spiritual path, to put that on someone else can be very gaslighting and harmful as well, because you cannot like manifest yourself or positive think yourself out of trauma responses or like complex PTSD. Even the pieces around, is this a potentially a mental health crisis or is it stable spiritual awakening? Because I get a lot of people who are very professional, grounded, like you'd never know in day-to-day life if you ran into them, like unless it came up and you talked about it. They might be in corporate culture everywhere, but they're very spiritual. So there can be this fear of like, am I going crazy? And it's like, no, you're like, a lot of this is actually very helpful. It can help with resiliency. It can be a very normal, and there's research to point towards like actually probably like evolutionary part of our human history and part of our human birthright is the ability to connect with this like source larger than us, to receive messages from it, to communicate with it. Like there is science there, but there's also times where this is getting unstable as well. So it's like, are you worried about someone? When to be worried, when to maybe get some other help, when to get things stabilized. And then I kind of get into the stuff that can be really toxic, and I see it as a spectrum. Like most of it, I think my philosophy about people in general and harm in the world is, I think most people are doing the best they can with where they're at. Most people mean well, most people are good, but there's a whole spectrum in there of like, when we know better, we can do better. And there's lots of things where as a culture, we tend to be most of the manifestation and spiritual pieces tends to get very capitalistic, consumeristic, very material driven. It also can get very toxically positive of like, oh, just manifest this and like think of the check, and oh, well, your soul signed up for this, so we're just gonna move on and not like actually hold space for any of this. And it's like, and I work in that role. I've had those messages come in too. I've had clients who receive that, like not from me, but from their like helping facilitate that connection with that higher self for them. And like, actually both are true. There is this duality of, we can connect with this spiritual self and our human self is still there too. So there's time and place for both. There's time and place for, sometimes we need to go through the human emotions of like sadness, rage, fear. Like they're evolutionary ingrained. Spiritual path is not about not feeling those, but it is about like emotional maturity and being like, how do we actually like ride those, hold space for them, move through them, and then those messages can come in, but it doesn't take us out of being human. So I think there's that level of it. And I go into different different facets of that, because it can show up in all sorts of ways. Like, I've seen people get really stigmatized about even just considering medication for, it tends to be mental health more. Like, some spiritual communities are really harsh about it still, where there's, I get the concerns around like kind of the pharmaceutical industry and are we just over medicating, where, but for many people who are actually on a genuine journey where they're looking at everything, medication can actually be a really helpful part of an overall treatment plan for many people. And if you're like, okay, I have all these symptoms, but I'm just going to take medication, I'm never going to address anything, and I know there's trauma, I know there's my thinking's bad, I know my habits are bad, and I'm just going to medicate myself, it's like, yeah, that is, you're slapping a band-aid on it, and that's okay. Like, sometimes people need to be there, and there's no judgment in that. But if someone's using it as a part of a holistic piece, I've just seen way too much like shame, shunning, like people losing their support networks in spiritual communities because they're considering medication or even taking it, or even hormone replacement therapy and like perimenopause, menopause. Again, human body, like some things we cannot, I'm not at like a Jesus level. I don't think most people are, where you can just be like, oh, I'm just gonna like come back to life and regenerate. Like, we can, there's time and place for every tool. And so I think it's about breaking down some of the stigma. And then I get into, okay, sometimes there's some shadow stuff where it's like people may not know their scope of practice. This piece, I find people can be more vulnerable because you can get into spiritual spaces and spiritual teachers, and they can be saying the things, they may have these spiritual gifts. So people can let their guard down more to be like, oh, this person's like more evolved, or obviously they're in a loving place, or like, well, they're connected and they're just wanting to help. And it's like, ooh, sometimes there's a lot of shadow ego stuff going on. And there's even a small percentage here who are actually like dangerous or manipulative personality types who actually I've seen like trauma aftermath from people getting too close, whether it's like financial, sexual, all sorts of abuse and exploitation that can happen, that can leave people who were already vulnerable in a really bad space. And that was a big incentive for me to write this book, because I was like, F this. Like, I want people to know what to look for, so they're not less likely to be manipulated here, or they can come back to it and be like, is this going on? So it's not calling out any individual person, but it's like, here's a set of reflection questions. Here's things to look for.
Yeah, and I think too, depending where you are in your journey, like I've had a client, and to get him out of the depression, he had to have medication. But then once he was on that medication, we could do the other work. So then he could work to get off the medication again. But he needed to get to that point because it was it was a life or death situation, but because of the point he was in, right? Like, and I really like that you bring up that point, that it's not about shunning, because everyone's on their own journey and they need to find ways to address that. And like you said, if it's about numbing and putting the band-aid over things, well, that's not what it's about. It's about moving yourself into a space where you can heal, because when you're in that tragedy and that trauma response, you can't do the work there because you're in fight or flight. It's when you shift out of that and you're in the stable position that you can do the work. And I think a lot of us forget that too. Like you said, we're in this body, and we forget that the most healing you can do is when you're in a stable state. Just because you've lost some weight doesn't mean you stop going to the gym and, go back to all your old habits. You have to bring in those old habits and continue to do the work if you want to keep your, or get to a point where you can stabilize it and you're happy in yourself, but you don't go back to those old habits that got you there in the first place. So I really like, Katie, that you brought that contrast in, and also highlighting, there is a lot of misperceptions being peddled. There is a lot of toxicity around New Age spirituality, and a lot of people have been burnt, and a lot of people have, and then unfortunately for the rest of us, it kind of puts us in like a dimmer light sometimes, because it's like, I was talking to this one person, and I generally just was saying, hey, did you want to see if I can see anything energetically? And I just ended up getting this tirade of like, no, you're not taking my money. I was like, actually, no, I wasn't, putting any of that out there at all. But I could tell, there was something that had clearly happened just before that. So, it's really interesting. been on all sides of it, like even being a person who has had things happen to me that I'm like, oh, that wasn't right, and as you, especially as you were saying, as you start your spiritual journey, you are more vulnerable because you haven't learned to trust your intuition and your discernment as much, so it makes it harder. And then some are really subtle too. Some will find your vulnerabilities and push those buttons because they're the values you have, and you think, oh, but it's just a shiny coin, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's not that regulated spaces have all the answers and they are free from their problems. That's not true at all.
No.
But I mean, when you get into unregulated spaces, I think I call it kind of like the quote unquote Wild West, especially around spiritual awakening stuff, because for so few professionals actually talk about it openly. There's research around this. It's called like the divided life, where there's many people who've actually had spiritual experiences or have a strong sense too, but it tends to be an area that most people don't talk about very publicly or even at all, just because there still is that fear of like stigmatization, or people going to think I'm crazy or judge me. And so a lot of when people kind of Google or look for like help in that spiritual realm, like you get such a smattering of people talking about it, like that. I hear that a lot, and I've seen it as well too, where you're like, who is helpful, like who can I follow? And the book is not meant to just be like, oh, everybody's terrible and they're doing this. It's mainly for people navigating the path, but also if people are holding space in that, I hope that they can take some stuff away from it too, because I do see a general trend kind of since the pandemic, more and more, which in many ways there's a lot, again, double-edged sword. There's a lot of positives with it. There's more destigmatization of mental health, more mental health advocates. There's more people talking about spirituality, alternative practices, mental health. The danger I see with it is there's more and more people stepping into that space who don't seem to have any training in it. And it's a very intensive training process for a reason. And I'm not saying like Western training is the only way. Like many Indigenous histories have long lineages, but they're just not formal. But my concern is similar to what you say. We're like, I had this channeling session, it was amazing, and now I'm going to go do this with no lineage, with no mentorship, with no, like, I just know everything now. And or I did this ayahuasca journey in someone's basement, like not out of the lineage completely. I did this one like coaching course online. It's just like I've seen some people kind of pivot into mental health where they're now talking about treating depression, treating like trauma, and I don't see anything. I'm like, you used to be an angel card reader. Like, why are you doing this now? Like, this is actually really dangerous for clients and for you, because you don't know what you don't know here. And do you know appropriately? I would not want to send anyone there for like treatment of this with someone who has no training in it. Like, you could just so unintentionally not screen for risk, not have a safety plan. Like, there's so many things and to know about in it. And I'm not saying there isn't a time and space, but it's more, there is kind of a human cognitive error of like, when we know a little bit about a subject, we think we know more than we do about it. And like, I've been in mental health for 2 decades. I'm very specialized in what I do. I'm still learning constantly. I'm still training constantly. And there's so many things I refer on because they're not my area of specialty and I'm not competent to treat them. But I know where that line is, and I can have those discussions. I know, like, I have supervision. Do my ongoing work. It's not about being fully healed at all, but it's like, does someone know where their lane is, and like who are they helping, who are they referring out?
Yeah, and I think that's such an important thing. Like, even when you work as part of a team too, like it's really important to not to just rely on one person, I think, as well. Like coming from allied health, where we have, would have a multidisciplinary team for a child. I worked with children, and on the contrast, like even when I coach my clients, I'm like, you need a team of people. You can't just have me. You can't just have, you need someone. And even me, I know if like my body starts to break down, I have a chunk of professionals I'll go to work with that. I have my coach. I have, it's not just one person I rely on. It's actually, and it's when you're in that happy state, but when you're in a state of neutrality, that there's no crisis going on, that it's really good to build those networks, because then you're more able to trust your intuition rather than just reacting. You're actually going out intentionally and going, okay, I don't want that to happen again. What things can I put in place to support me if it does, so that when it does, I actually have that team ready and available. And I feel that's kind of what you're saying too, like from a holistic medicine point of view, if it's out of your skill set, you refer on. But if it's, something, bigger than what you can do as well, you can go, hey, maybe look into this too,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I just keep seeing this image. I keep seeing this image of you in the middle, and then like kind of like this spider web going out, because the person comes to you first, but then you help create this web around them. So it's almost like a safety net, so that when, everything's going pear-shaped, and even if they, for some reason they might not be able to get in contact with you, you've already done that work to support them, so they have other structures in place to catch them when they fall.
Yeah, and I'm sure for therapy work that is definitely true. And I'm part of other people's webs too. Like I have referral networks of like, here's practitioners, like here's a list of people. These are the ones I think you might vibe with, see who fits for you. And because again, there's so many different people who do different things, and like people are complex. We're multi-layered.
Yes.
It's not one person can't have all your answers. And that's one of the red flags there too. If you got one person who's like, their way's the only way, they've got all the answers, they're trying to guilt you they're trying to use fear, guilt, or manipulation to get you to pay for them. Like, and again, I think people need to be paid appropriately to do it, to make a living at the work and to be in it full time. But there's a difference between, I want you to get the best support, this is what I'd recommend, or trying to like fear and bully someone into.
Yeah, and I guess that comes back to the person's integrity, right? Like, what is their driving force, and what is their bigger thing, So sometimes your role is you're the connector and you connect people together, or sometimes you are there to hold that person in that place in their journey for that amount of time that they need you. But at the same time, I had this beautiful journey with my naturopath, and I was suffering from chronic stress and burnout, and he was basically keeping me from falling off the edge with like natural medicines and things like that. And when it took nearly 2 years, but I went back to him and he's like, you don't need anything. And I'm like, excuse me? Because I was so used to walking out with this shopping list, but there was no aminosity, there was no, blah, blah, blah. It was actually like, hey, look, we've gotten this far in our journey now. Like, keep doing what you're doing and keep maintaining it, so that you don't have to come back unless you really need to. But if you need to, my door's open, and for him, I know he's very, like, for him, that's in essence of him, because he has that integrity and, he's really okay like that. But some people wouldn't do that. They would find something that you need to keep taking, or they would say, oh, no, you need to come back. I'm really concerned. You're not testing for anything. It's like, no, actually, just accept that maybe I've gotten this far on the journey, and let's celebrate that,
Yeah.
And I guess that's, in essence, if anyone's listening, first of all, try and trust your own intuition and your discernment. If something doesn't feel right, like, ask questions. And if they're not answering your questions, well, that's concerning in itself, and secondly, be willing to explore. You don't have to feel like a loyalty to one person if they're not resonance with you, because we grow as a soul, and so do the people that we're working with. And sometimes our journeys separate us, and you might come back, but you might not.
Very much agree. I'm like, reason, season, lifetime. It's not my job to know which one it's going to be in the beginning. We'll see.
I like that, reason, season, lifetime. I love that. So what inspired you to create your free offering, Katie, that you're offering everybody, which I'm going to make sure to put in the show notes?
Yeah, well, I was kind of getting the calling of just make the information my area of specialty, like share more information on a wider audience. When I first had the spiritual calling around like the psychology side, that was easier rationally to do, because I knew what that could look like potentially. Yeah. This time, this level of like stepping into the unknown, or call to the unknown, I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen with this. So I just know I still have to maintain my license here. So I'm not doing therapy outside of my jurisdiction, but psychoeducation, like the book, I was excited to get the book out there. I wanted some freebies for people and high quality information. So even the series comes with other resources. Like there's things I want to be like, there's a lot of high quality stuff that this is for free. So the book's lower cost, but it's, again, there's like, okay, here's some flags around spiritual awakening versus is this a mental health crisis? Here's some resources. Like that stuff's all just goes out with the automatic sign up. So
Perfect.
I want to, because I think there's also the piece around, we talk about team, like the team, if people can access that team, if you have the financial resources, like that's amazing, get the team. But I also understand like there's a systemic issues too, and not everybody is able, like not everyone, a lot of it can be private pay. And I think I'm in Canada, so we have pretty decent healthcare, we have pretty decent nonprofits. Like from other areas of the world, I think we still have issues with it. I mean, it's not perfect for sure. I mean, definitely there's people here still waiting, struggling, not getting everything they need. But compared to like some of the other groups I hear about in other parts of the world, it can be a lot worse. So, and I think it's like you can often find stuff at your level of budget that can help in some way. But I also wanted to be able to put out stuff that more people can access, that it is sustainable for me to offer as well, because like I'm a primary parent, single parent, like my working hours are for me to actually do this as a career. I can't like work one-on-one.
Yeah.
I've done pro bono and like sliding scale for almost 2 decades, but I was getting more and more the calling of, okay, do like channel this work into reaching more people. So now I don't take anyone new for that, but I will do like, I'll speak for nonprofits or other places where it's like, this will go reach like 2,000 people or 1,000 people can be on this, get all this information and can benefit from it.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm feeling called to do more in that area.
Which is beautiful. And it's funny because last year, was it last year? Yeah, last year. I was like, it was last year. I was like at a point where I was living paycheck to paycheck. So I understand how, when you're trying to level up, like I got really savvy, but the amount of good quality free stuff that I was so blessed the universe sent my way that really helped me change things, and then when I did finally find a coach that I wanted to work with, he made this offer that was like so affordable that I was just really, really grateful, and then it got me into a point where I could actually invest more in myself. So for anyone listening, it doesn't have to stay like that, but you have to show up and do the work too. If you're going to show up and do free things, like fully be committed, right? Show up and take notes and take away what you learn. And if it resonates with you, practice it, because that is where you're going to get the most growth. And that is where you're going to start to shift like what's going on for you on the inside. And that will reflect on the outside too.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's like a fine line on that, because there's the kind of traditional, some of the toxic kind of coaching industry can be like, oh, well, you're not serious about it or go into debt to pay for this. And I don't agree with that. I think there's a time and place to invest.
Agreed.
But I don't want anyone putting themselves in a really stressful financial situation working with me. I would want to refer them out. I totally get that. I've been there. I've had to do my own work around like when I first kind of went into business, it was like, oh, you can't afford, okay, what can you do? And then my first tax return, I was like, oh, I would have done better working at McDonald's this year. And I have like a master's degree registered. I was like, this is not sustainable. So
I know.
I got to figure out how to get comfortable with numbers.
I know that. I think that's a lot of us, like, because when we care so much, that can be like our own worth journey too, right? Like, because I'm the same, Katie. I'm like, no, this isn't a bad price. Like, this is like me actually being able to pay for my family's food. Like this is, and then
me to keep doing this next year.
Exactly. Exactly. So as we finish up our time together, I asked all my guests, if you could heal or change something in the world, what would it be?
Oh man, this is a tough time to ask that, I think. I do think, I think it's a lot of what I'm doing is I want people to be able to reconnect with that source within themselves and know that it is within them. I do think our personal intuition, I mean, it's really our direct connection where we can receive information from like God, source, universe, nature, higher self, like call it whatever you want. It's not religious. It's a personal experience, but it's like, then we can, with all the fear, all the chaos, all the division that's going on. It's like it can bring us back to a state where like they're on a soul level, it's okay. And that's where we can receive the guidance of like, here's what we can do and how we can show up and what we can be here, and just focus on that.
Yeah, which is so important, because it's that through that connectedness that often we forget that's part of what human needs are too. Like, we need to be connected. We need to be, with other souls who either get us or will help lift us up. And sometimes we forget that aspect, right? Yeah. And then apart from your website, where else can people find you, Katie?
I'm on most social media. Some of it I'm scaling back a little. I'll still maintain it there just because some of the mental health research and the way it is now, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to spend a ton of time here or have people spending a ton of time here.
I understand.
So definitely like curate your feed, like unfollow, set limits. But yeah, I have accounts on most ones mainly to kind of claim it and to put stuff there.
Beautiful. I'll make sure I pop all that in the show notes as well. And I completely understand. I find myself doom scrolling and I pull myself back out and I'm like, no, don't get sucked in, So really good habit to learn to break, everybody listening. Well, thank you so much for your time, Katie, and sharing your journey and how you came about your book, and such a powerful message that you're sharing about helping people, especially who are beginning their spiritual journey or feel like, something's not in alignment. And also, bringing together Western medicine, I guess, spirituality at the same time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you for listening to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We have so much love and gratitude that you have taken the time out of your day to empower you on your healing journey. The views shared by the person being interviewed might not necessarily reflect that of the host and should be used at your own discernment. Trust what resonates for you and follow your heart and soul guidance. If you have any underlying medical conditions or mental health issues, please consult with your healthcare provider before pursuing any of the recommendations. Likewise, you can always contact the person being interviewed to find out more information. This can be found in the show notes. Until next time, remember to activate, align, heal, empower, and find love in everything that you do.